Hello, Meira.
I
You and I first met when we were both students, first at Harvard and then at New England Conservatory many years ago. And Zamir commissioned you, I think it was 1998, for the 50th anniversary of Israel's founding, and you composed a choral work called We Are Dreamers. And since then, I've been a great fan of your music, especially those huge orchestrations. And you and I have been talking for many years about how we could perform some of those pieces in a chamber version. And I'm delighted that you have adapted a version of your major choral symphony, Ahava, into a standalone piece for choir, soprano solo, piano, cello, and percussion. It is so beautiful, so atmospheric. Can you tell us something about how the piece came to be? What inspired you?
so I just actually made a short video telling that story because I wanted to tell it, and you'll see why. I wanted to tell it in front of a tree, and I was at our beach. We have a home at Bicycle Beach, North Carolina. So before we moved back to South Carolina, where I am now, I'm in Columbia. Before we moved back, we made my husband helped me make a recording in front of it's a it's a it's a black cherry tree I'm standing in front of. Um, but you'll see with the video why the tree is so important.
Great. All right, let's watch that now.
In June of 1991, I was on the campus of Bryn Mawr College in Pennsylvania. I was there for a Jewish renewal retreat, and I was teaching a class on Judaism and the environment, and we were setting text to music. So one day early in the week, I was out davening my afternoon prayers, the mincha service, and I found a meadow, a beautiful meadow, place overlooking a meadow. And when I finished my prayers, I turned around, and behind me was this magnificent beech tree. And I was really drawn to the beech tree. So I went over, kind of wrapped my arms around her. It's the kind of so big that it would take three of me to wrap completely around the trunk. And I was just like, felt so good to be with this beech tree. And I looked up and somehow a question emerged. Do you have a song for me? And pretty soon I heard this sound. Ahava, 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 Ahava is the Hebrew word for love. So I knew this was really special. And it felt like the tree was just emanating love to me, and like the tree maybe had always been emanating love to all of us, to all of creation, and that not only was the tree emanating love, but probably all of creation was emanating love.
Wow, that is so beautiful. Meira, did you ever sing in a choir? You've composed for choir. What's your direct experience in that area?
As you know, having been a student at New England Conservatory, and I remember the Monteverdi Vespers that we sang in Jordan Hall. Oh, such a wonderful introduction to Monteverdi, who I fell in love with. And then the New England Conservatory Chorus was the resident chorus with the Boston Symphony. And so right across the street, we got to go over and rehearse with some great conductors. William Steinberg was one, and then Michael Tilson Thomas when he was so young. He conducted the Symphony of Psalms. Yeah, that was, I still remember the Laudati. I mean, and his presence was just what a gift to have sung with him.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was phenomenal. I haven't. I mean, I sing now in the synagogue, um, but I haven't really been in a chorus since New England Conservatory.
So our program is dealing with the challenges that women musicians have faced. Were there obstacles that you had to overcome to become a composer, performer?
Um, I think it was really more a mindset. I mean, when I was growing up, I didn't see any role models for, not that I even thought of it. I didn't even think about possibly being a composer. It just wasn't in my like blinders. That was beyond the blinders. And for a good reason. Women were not really allowed to be in the expressive arts, even in visual arts. I mean, you look at Georgia O'Keeffe, who
Hmm.
is such an icon, and she was pegged as a woman artist, which she resisted, but um, and she struggled to be recognized for her art. Um, and similar stories with so many the outliers of women and their struggles. I was born at a time, just in time. I didn't get to be a composer early on, but after graduating from Harvard and Radcliffe, the women's movement in the early 70s was throughout the Boston area, and we had, consciousness raising groups. Assertiveness training was one of the things we did. How to stand up for yourself, how to stand up inside for yourself, to be who you could be, and that was a big influence. And it gave me, it opened up possibilities inside of to do whatever I wanted. And then the other thing, though, that I really have to say brought me to composing was meditating. So at the same time, there was the women's movement, all that awakening. There was a spiritual awakening going on, and coming from the East, and um, I learned how to do transcendental meditation with 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the afternoon or whatever, and some kind of a mantra. But the point was, is a way of settling the mind. And they even said, after you learn transcendental meditation, you will notice creativity bubbling up. I thought, oh yeah, sure. But it's something changed in me. And when I went to a concert at Jordan Hall, and Marty Ehrlich was playing the soprano saxophone, and he's a wonderful improviser, jazz and third stream or world music, whatever you want to call it. And it was like he was playing this horn, and it was like flowers coming out of his head. I think I was a little elevated in my mood. and, but I was transfixed, and I wanted that. I knew I wanted it, and I knew I had it in me. So combined with the women's movement and the spiritual awakening, that really. And then there was a brand new class, composition for non-majors, for people who weren't thinking of themselves as composers. So it was a small class that Tom McKinley taught. I signed up for it, and I never looked back. It was just, I would go into that zone with the meditating, and this music would just come out. It was, after he some exercises that he did, just loved the exercises, and I don't know, it just took off, and that was who I needed to be. And luckily for me, it was at a time when it was just the beginning of the opening of more and more women. When I first went into composing at New England Conservatory, there was one female student. She was a little offbeat. I thought, well, she can do it because she's who she is, but I'm just a regular, person, and I'm not like offbeat or anything. I'm just kind of, I had this image of who I was. It wasn't like her, but I still needed to compose. I got to do it.
And it was
yeah, there are obstacles because you don't have all the networks that the men have. You know, you're a man, you're a friend, you know, but most men are friends with other men, just like most of my friends are women. And so my friends, there's not an automatic personal network. It grows, and there's a kind of a benevolence, I think, from conductors. Oh well, I need to have more women on my program. I'll ask Meira to do something. I have this feeling, and maybe it's just imaginary, but some people have been very kind to me. Nicholas Smith had, you know, he believed in me. He was the conductor at the South Carolina Philharmonic who commissioned and premiered Ahava, as I mentioned in the video. And Neil Gittleman has also been very kind to me, and at the is in the Dayton Philharmonic, and he's commissioned several pieces and premiered them with consortium. I mean, but everyone, all of the conductors have been men, except for this year, and a few exceptions. This year, Diane Witchery performed this past year. She performed the first movement of my symphony, Living, Breathing Earth. So that was a woman to woman thing where we met, we had coffee, and I gave her a CD. She loved the CD. She eventually had a chance to do it, and she did it, and it was very comfortable. It's a different dynamic, and I don't want to say anything about our relationship because I feel like we go back so far and we have, you know, a really good relationship, but it's different. It's just, that's the way it is. And so when all of the people who are in the position of power or presenters or mostly men, it's a little different. It's just a little different.
Let me pick up on something that you said before. Do you think of yourself in any way as a woman composer? Do you think that there's some sound of your music that sounds like music by a woman? Is there a difference between music by men composers and women composers? Just as we would say, oh, that sounds Jewish. Is there something that sounds feminine?
Well, I think the answer to that is no. I don't think there's a female sound. However, I think the men who choose to be composers, you know, people talk about a feminine aspect and a male aspect. And I think the creative aspect is more, to me, it's more of a female aspect. It's the sensitive nature. It's the, I was playing Chopin last night, and he's a huge influence, especially in my piano writing. I played a lot of Chopin growing up, especially at conservatory. And it's just such a sensitivity. I don't know. It's not written by a woman. However, there may be something, and I think I hate to say a stereotype because I don't think it's true, but there's something about the Mother Earth. We talk about Mother Earth, and La Tierra in Spanish is a female. Ha'adama in Hebrew is feminine. Yeah. Okay, so there's something, so much of my work is inspired by the earth. So there may be something with that I just feel such a grounding connection. And then there's the fertility aspect and the womb aspect, that I think there may be something in there that I as a woman connect with differently. So that's beyond the sensitivity part. It's more the physical experience of having a physical body and what that does to the way we perceive and what we want to communicate.
Yeah, beautiful. Well put. What about you as a Jewish composer? You've had a return to Judaism. What role has that played in your music and your creativity?
That's been huge. It's been pivotal. My dissertation was the Shacharit service. I didn't call it sacred service like Blacha, just morning service, I guess, or Shabbat morning service. big ones that's similar to Ahava in its original form, which is two soloists, soprano and tenor, and a narrator, and big chorus and big orchestra. And that was my dissertation for my doctoral degree. So that was my first big composition, was that. And actually, it even goes so far as like, I was looking for my voice and my language, because we were at a point at that time, it was in the late 80s, and I was beyond really wanting to do everything atonal. For a long time, there was a lot of pressure to do everything atonal, or at least mostly atonal. I would be kind of on the soft end of atonal, but there was still, it was forbidden to do anything tonal, basically. You were considered without a brain if you did that. So, and I liked atonal. I liked Schoenberg, the early Schoenberg. I liked Berg, and I even liked Webern, the 12th. I mean, it's just so, there's some beauty to it. And I like the, this kind of the inner part of the psyche is like, and we have it all the time in our language. I mean, to look at the, if you watch horror movies, you know, it's going to be atonal music. You know, there's a lot of atonal music on television or whatever videos or whatever you're going to watch. It's a needed part of the language. But we were doing exclusively atonal, and I was searching for a way out. And I also had I was like a schizophrenic composer. I had some pieces that were like in the minor mode that were like my Jewish pieces. And then there were, but they were simple. And then there were these more complex atonal and lots of rhythmic changes and shifts. And I wanted something, I don't know, something that combined everything. So I found that in the Jewish modes, in the prayer modes with Shacharit. And I found that I could go in and out of this modal form, which wasn't like the tired and overused, strictly tonal major or minor, but the mode had more fluidity, and I could do more with kind of different melodic turns, you know, just from the cantillation, the traditional cantillation, and it was authentic. I wasn't borrowing somebody else's. It was mine. I loved it. It was mine, and I loved learning about it. And I so admire what you have contributed to this whole literature about Jewish music. And I just have to give you so much kavod, because you have really, in our generation, done so much. I mean, your whole volume about the Torah trope and all the cantillations for the different books. And I was just watching your video about Psalm 114 and linking the traditional way of chanting that, the Jewish way, with the old early church Gregorian chant.
And that piece has a beautiful soprano sax solo in it too.
You know, I just listened to the first part, which is the two things, but I want to go back and listen to the rest. But with your introduction, you were talking about that, and I learned about that, and you know, the psalm tones. Anyway, it's kind of a long answer, but so it just fundamentally, it influenced my language, and it gave me a way to be as expressive as I needed to. And I found even that I could go back and forth between different languages by using a whole tone, and it was like a bridge. I could go from tonal to whole tone to atonal, and there was this whole way that everything kind of started to fit together. And it was because I immersed myself in the prayer modes for Shacharit that I got educated at the beginning of an education of Jewish music. And I continue with that with Yishakeni and the modes for the reading the Song of Songs, Shir HaShirim, the Sweeter Than Wine Yishakeni piece. And so yeah, and even especially I want to really get back to Ahava, because in the video I explained how I learned the chant Ahava from the tree, which was such a gift. And then, when I had the opportunity to create a larger structure to hold it and to give it over, I looked in the liturgy and I saw the prayer, the blessing before the Shema ends with the word ahava, the ahava, that God is choosing us with love. And then we sing, or then comes the declaration of faith, of unity, that there is one God, and that's our God, Shema. And right after that, v'ahavta, and you shall love this God. You shall love your God. And it's like your love, your God is love. And so the first movement is v'ahavta, you shall love the Lord, in Hebrew, and a little bit in English too. And then the word, we just repeat this chant on ahava, and then the soprano comes back and forth in with that. And then and with the Shema, it's like a warning in that first movement. It's like saying, pay attention, listen up. This is important. You need to know this. And then I learned from Arthur Waskow, who's a wonderful teacher of our generation, one of the great minds of our generation, and so creative. And in his whole work, his whole output is connecting Judaism with the environment. That's one of his main contributions. He's always looking for new ways to do that. And he saw the second paragraph after the Shema, which starts with, again, with "and you shall love and teach to your children." And then the second part of it is from Deuteronomy, which I have, anyways, I think it's chapter 11. Beware lest you go astray and fall and bow to alien gods, and you lose everything. You lose who you are. You lose your land. You are banished from the earth. And who are these alien gods that we would be bowing down to? And is it not the gods of, in our time, they're exemplified by big oil and greed and an inability to see past how we could possibly live on the earth without destroying it. Mm-hmm. We are destroying the earth. It's not happening to us, we are doing it. The verse says, "Avadatem," and you will be banished. We are banishing ourselves. So that's the second movement.
Wow. And
then, so right after that, in the same passage, that same second paragraph after the Shema in the Jewish prayer book, that section from Deuteronomy continues so reassuringly, "V'samtem," and place. So don't do that. Don't go there. This is a warning, which we're living. But don't go there. Come back. Come back to this heart. Place them on your, let me just read it because I might get it wrong. It says, this is what you're singing. "Place these words upon your heart and teach them diligently unto your children. Bind them on your hand. Place them between your eyes. Speak of them at home or on the way, wherever you go, whatever door you go through. Ahava, just remember, love, just love, love, love. Write them on the doorposts and upon your gates." And this is the thing that just sends me. "So that you may live, you and your children, on the land which God gave to your ancestors, for as long as the heavens are over the earth." And I just tear up because we've inherited this beautiful earth. I know they're talking about, literally, they're talking about the Jewish people in the land of Israel, but it's not just that. It's the whole of humanity. And we've inherited, our ancestors have passed it down to us pretty well intact until now. And we've had this technology that's become our God, this industrial revolution, and the ability to extract oil. Now we're fracking gas. When it's right here in front of us, we have the sun and we have the wind, we have so much. And can we pass it on to our children? So you and your children. It's supposed to be you and your children on this land. So, and as I mentioned earlier, before we started the interview, we were talking about what it's like to be in this time. And I was saying how hard it is to be away from my grandchildren. Having grandchildren, and I think you also have grandchildren, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah. So you want to pass it on. It's such a tragedy that's unfolding. And so the reason I love going back to the Jewish tradition is there's always a hope. There's never an end. I love it that doesn't end on a positive. I love it that in the services on the Sabbath, when we chant the section from the prophets, the Haftarah, and whatever portion it is, no matter what the prophet is predicting, even if it doesn't end on a positive note, they'll go back and they'll take that one verse and tack it on at the end, so that you always end on a positive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because we have no other choice. If we don't have hope, we might as well not continue. And we're going to continue because we're always choosing life. That's what we're told to do. Choose life, choose life. And so with my music, I'm always thinking of that. The same with the Ocean Calling trilogy for 2 pianos that I'm hoping to record. It was canceled in July. Maybe it'll be done in November. That's a warning from the ocean calling out. And how important is the ocean for this earth? 70% of our oxygen comes from the ocean. Who knew that? The kelp in the ocean, these forests of kelp are breathing out this oxygen for us. I could go on and on about the earth.
Well, we have a lot of good stuff there. And you've already spoken to the condition of the pandemic, unless there's something you want to add or anything else. I mean, I've run out of questions and you've said so much good stuff. Anything else you'd like to add, Meira?
I just want to thank you and Zamir, and I know some of the singers personally. And you have I thank you for honoring me with this performance and sharing this passion for the Jewish tradition, the Jewish musical tradition, and what it has to teach us, not only as Jews, but as the whole of humanity. What can our tradition bring to the world? And for me, I'm so grateful to have this megaphone of music. I mean, I sit quietly at my piano and I write hugely, enormously loud things for the orchestra. I'm kind of a quiet person, but not with my orchestra music and not with my other music. I can be as loud as I need to be. And it's just, I feel like it's a calling. And I feel like you share the calling, you and all of those at Zamir, in Zamir. Your whole organization shares the calling of bringing beauty and meaning to the world through music.
Well, thank you, Meira. It's been delightful talking to you, and I thank you for your time and especially for your music.
Thank you, Josh.